quiet June night in 1912, the small town of Villisca, Iowa, would become the site of one of America's most haunting, unsolved murders. 8 people, 6 members of the Moore family and 2 young guests, were brutally killed with an axe while they slept. More than a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. Villisca was the picture of early 20th century American tranquility, a modest farming community in southwestern Iowa with roughly 2,000 residents where everyone knew their neighbors. The Moore family was well respected in town. Josiah Moore ran a successful farm implement business, and his wife Sarah was active in their Presbyterian church. Together they were raising 4 children: Herman, 11, Mary Catherine, 10, Arthur, 7, and little Paul, just 5 years old. June 9, 1912, began as an ordinary Sunday. That evening, Sarah Moore had organized the annual Children's Day program at their church, a celebration that drew most of the community. The entire Moore family attended, along with much of the town. When the program ended around 9:30 p.m., the Moore children's friends, sisters Lena Stillinger, 12, and Ina Mae Stillinger, 8, were invited to sleep over. The girls were nervous about walking home in the darkness, so Josiah Moore telephoned their house. He reached their older sister Blanche, who promised to relay the message to their parents. The group walked home together through the warm summer night, arriving at the Moore residence sometime between 9:45 and 10 p.m. No one could have imagined the horror that awaited them in those dark hours. The next morning, Mary Peckham, the Moore's neighbor, rose early to hang laundry in her yard around 5 a.m. She immediately noticed something odd. The Moore house was completely still. No one was stirring, no morning chores were being done, unusual for a farming family that typically rose with the sun. By 7 a.m., Mrs. Peckham's concern had deepened into alarm. She walked over and knocked firmly on the door. Silence. She tried the handle, locked. After feeding the Moore's chickens, which had been left unattended in their coop, she called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. Ross arrived quickly and tried shouting through the door. Nothing. Every window shade had been pulled down tight. Growing desperate, he retrieved a spare key and unlocked the door. What Ross Moore found in the downstairs guest bedroom sent him running from the house in shock. 2 small bodies covered by a blood-soaked sheet, the headboard splattered with gore. He immediately called for the town marshal, Henry Hank Horton. When Marshal Horton entered the home around 8:30 a.m., he found a scene of calculated brutality. In the kitchen sat an uneaten plate of food beside a pot of water stained red with blood. Every mirror in the house had been covered with clothing pulled from the family's dressers, as had the glass panes in the doors. Leaning against the wall in the guest bedroom was the murder weapon, an axe, partially cleaned, with a 4-pound slab of bacon wrapped in cloth placed bizarrely beside it. Upstairs, the carnage continued. The ceilings above the beds bore deep axe marks, not from striking the victims, but from the killer swinging wildly in what appeared to be a frenzy. Dust from the damaged ceiling had settled on the bed covers below. Each victim had been bludgeoned with the blunt end of the axe as they slept. Sarah Moore was the only victim whose face bore cuts from the blade itself. Her face was rendered completely unrecognizable. Josiah's skull had been crushed from his upper jaw upward, with blood, brain matter, and bone fragments splattered across the headboard. Both parents had been struck 20 to 30 times each, and evidence suggested the killer had returned to their room for a second attack after killing the others. The 4 more children appeared to have died without waking, each killed by devastating blows to the head while they slept. In the guest room, the Stillinger sisters presented a disturbing scene. 12-year-old Lena was positioned halfway out of the bed, her nightgown pulled above her waist, her underwear discarded beneath the bed. Her younger sister Ina lay beside her in an equally suspicious position. Though medical examination revealed no sexual assault, investigators believed the killer had deliberately arranged their bodies for his own gratification. Marshal Horton returned outside to Ross Moore with devastating news. "My God, Ross, there's somebody murdered in every bed." He rushed back to town to summon the doctor, but made a critical error. He mentioned the murders to several townspeople. In 1912, Villisca, news traveled at lightning speed. Telephone operators activated the all-call system, broadcasting the shocking news across every line. Stores closed, neighbors abandoned their morning routines. Within an hour, over 100 curious residents had descended on the Moore property. The crime scene became a circus. People pushed through doors, trampled through rooms, and gawked at the bodies, potentially destroying crucial evidence. Marshal Horton tried desperately to control the crowd, but each time he cleared one entrance, more people flooded through another. The coroner didn't arrive until after the townspeople had already invaded the home. Fortunately, the marshal and 2 doctors had completed an initial examination before the chaos began, documenting what they could of the undisturbed scene. Investigators found 2 cigarette butts in the attic, suggesting the killer had hidden there, waiting for the family to return home and fall asleep. The fact that no one had awakened during the attacks spawned several theories. Some believed the killer drugged the family's food. Others thought each victim died from a single, powerful initial blow, with the killer returning later to further mutilate the parents' faces. The slab of bacon remained puzzling. One theory suggested the killer intended to steal it. A more disturbing theory, given the positioning of the Stillinger sisters and the bacon's proximity to their bodies, proposed the killer had used it for sexual gratification. However, no biological evidence supported this theory. The Villisca murders weren't isolated. Similar axe murders were occurring across the Midwest, following the routes of the Southern Pacific Railroad. Whole families bludgeoned in their sleep, windows and mirrors covered, crime scenes staged with eerie similarities. Whether these were connected or copycat crimes remains unknown. The investigation dragged on for 2 years before a trial finally took place. The sense of safety that had defined small-town Villisca evaporated overnight. Within days of the murders, every gun and door lock in town had been purchased. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion. Everyone had a theory, a suspect, a person they'd always found peculiar. Despite numerous confessions and accusations, 5 men emerged as primary suspects. Senator Frank Jones had employed Josiah Moore for years before Josiah opened his own competing farm implement business. Their professional rivalry turned intensely personal. The men refused to speak when they passed on the street. Rumors persisted, never proven, that Josiah had conducted an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law, adding fuel to their bitter feud. William Blackie Mansfield became a suspect 2 years after Villisca, when he was accused of murdering his own wife, infant child, and in-laws with an axe in a crime bearing striking similarities to the Moore murders. Detective James Newton Wilkerson of the Burns Detective Agency constructed a theory that Senator Jones had hired Mansfield as a killer. However, Mansfield's payroll records proved he was in Illinois when the Villisca murders occurred. He was acquitted and later successfully sued Detective Wilkerson for $2,225. Henry Lee Moore, unrelated to the victim family, was convicted of murdering his mother and grandmother with an axe in Columbia, Missouri, several months after the Villisca killings. A federal investigator believed he was responsible for Villisca and 22 other axe murders nationwide. Though never convicted of the Villisca crimes, he served 36 years for killing his mother and grandmother. Andy Sawyer was a railroad worker who had been in Villisca the night of the murders. His behavior afterward raised red flags. He became obsessed with newspaper coverage of the case, slept fully clothed while gripping his work axe, and allegedly told his foreman he'd fled Villisca, fearing suspicion because he was a stranger in town. However, records showed he'd been arrested for vagrancy in Osceola, Iowa, when the murders occurred. Reverend George Kelly became the most controversial suspect. An English-born traveling preacher with known mental health issues and a history of voyeurism and sexual deviance, Kelly had been a guest at the Children's Day program the night of the murders. He left town on the 5:19 a.m. train before the bodies were discovered. In the weeks following the murders, Kelly developed an intense, almost obsessive interest in the case. He wrote letters to authorities and family members requesting details. He visited the crime scene and inserted himself into the investigation. His behavior struck Detective Tom O'Leary as suspicious enough to engage Kelly in correspondence. Kelly's responses were bizarre. He claimed to have been walking past the Moore house when he heard the axe striking, that the killer had stepped onto the porch to avoid a passing couple, that Mrs. Moore had sat up in bed before being killed. How could he know such details? Witnesses claimed Kelly discussed the murders on the train that morning before anyone had discovered the bodies. Kelly was arrested in 1917 and subjected to an aggressive interrogation. 3 men, a state attorney, a sheriff, and James Resden, head of what would become the Iowa Criminal Investigation Bureau, shouted threats and accusations until Kelly confessed. "God told me to commit the murders. I suffered the loss of my own little girl, and I have consecrated my services to exterminate wicked people." Kelly was tried twice. Both juries found him not guilty. Jury members noted Kelly's small stature, just 5'2" and 119 pounds, and his quiet, gentle demeanor. They observed the bruise on his face, likely from the interrogation. Many believed Kelly, despite his mental illness and odd behavior, was being scapegoated. Rumors persisted that Senator Jones had used his political influence to frame an innocent, troubled man. The investigation gradually lost momentum. Leads went cold, suspects died. The case files gathered dust. More than 110 years later, the Villisca axe murders remain one of Iowa's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Whoever killed the Moore family and the Stillinger sisters that June night in 1912 took their terrible secret to the grave, leaving behind only questions, theories, and the haunting memory of 8 lives violently stolen in the darkness. The Moore house still stands in Villisca today, preserved as a museum and paranormal investigation site, a grim monument to a crime that shattered a community and has never been solved.